Aaron Buman describes himself as the luckiest man in Newcastle following the bashing which has left him with 20 stitches.
Very sore and very lucky, extremely lucky.
Councillor Buman spent the night in hospital after being struck on the head as he was preparing to open for business early yesterday. It came just hours after a break-in at the cafe, the second in 2 weeks.
He jumped around the corner, jumped quite high and was screaming, and hit me on the head twice with a brick, and I just staggered back and just sort of realised, wow, this is really happening.
Councillor Buman made his escape when the offender turned his attention to the safe which he stole. The issue has raised concerns about security in Newcastle East. Councillor Buman saying he'd like to see better lighting in the area and more police.
It's up to the state to get us some more police urgently. There's an election in 12 months. Maybe it's a drum we need to beat loudly.
Lord Mayor John Tate says the city's Community Safety Panel, which meets monthly, will continue looking at ways of combating antisocial behaviour in Newcastle.
You always need the maintenance of the activities of making sure there's security, making sure there's service, making sure that people are reminded to be responsible.
Colleen West, NBN News.
To some, this cycle through the picturesque Wallumbye Valley near Cessnock may seem like the ultimate parliamentary perk. But for the 30 riders on the annual Polly's Pedal, including a dozen federal MPs, it is the final 200 kilometres of a gruelling 10-day, 1100k fundraising journey. It has also been about work, with Federal Health Minister Tony Abbott today visiting Cessnock Hospital for a personal update on an initiative tackling the local GP shortage.
But in particular, I went to the University Clinic at Cessnock and then went across to the hospital to talk to some of the nurses and other staff there.
Health is the beneficiary of the ride, with today and tomorrow's Hunter and Central Coast stages adding to the $300,000 for diabetes research to be delivered with no strings attached.
But the money that we raise for the research project at Westmead Hospital this way is money that they have total control over.
And some of the roads between Brisbane and Sydney have been given a ministerial once-over, with Roads Minister and Central Coast MP Jim Lloyd using it as a fact-finding mission.
Being on a bicycle, you really do know about the roads and you know about the traffic and the potholes, so it gives you an interesting perspective.
Gary Blair, NBN News.
With sponsors coming on board only at the 11th hour for this Surfest, more than ever organisers were hoping for something special, and those new financial backers must have been impressed with a final day of big surf and bigger crowds. Around 10,000 people packed Merewether, justifying the organisers' decision to move the event away from Newcastle Beach to take advantage of better waves.
It's always been a dream for mine to be able to present it there.
Logistically, it was a massive task to move all the event's infrastructure to Merewether. In 21 years, it's the first time the final day has been shifted, and it sure sets a precedent.
Now we're going to really seriously look at the aspect of what this event's about and how mobile we might have to be for the future with it to provide the best waves.
Yesterday's move received the blessing of Newcastle's surfing royalty. Mark Richards has seen many a surf fest, but none better.
In terms of surf conditions, that one's got to rank as number one. The spectacle at Merewether was pretty incredible. It was, I think a day that the surfers involved and the spectators won't forget in a long time.
Coming here to Merewether was a smart choice, and just giving the surfers the best ways possible, and it's fantastic. It's worked out to be a fantastic day.
Todd Nardi, NBN News.
Battling a dose of the flu, Milton Thaiday was flat out getting anywhere today, but the fullback says he'll be fine to play in Sunday's game, which shapes as a mini Origin selection.
Yeah, it is. Matty Bowen's been playing really well, and it's going to be a good matchup.
Playing his first senior league in North Queensland and with Origin positions now opening up at the Maroons, he's out to keep his name in the selection frame. But while all the talk of Sunday's match has been based on Newcastle's attack, the big hit at the club has been all about defence. Especially on the try line. In the first half alone, Newcastle was like a wall, conceding just a lone try in the dying seconds against a potent attacking Dragons lineup.
It's all attitude defence. That's the thing that we've worked on. We're defending really strongly at training, and that's going on to the game.
Just what tricks Andrew Johns has left remains to be seen, but he'll go a long way to emulate the feats of last weekend. A try and 9 conversions helped raise him to second highest on the all-time scorers list. He then took on the monster surf at Merewether with Luke Egan and company yesterday.
Next fine, yeah, it comes through no problem, so can't wait for Sunday.
That's when another record falls, when he becomes the most capped first-grade player in Newcastle history with 230 games. Just a month ago, Jamie Stauffer was the talk of the Australian motorcycle racing industry by scoring a clean sweep at Phillip Island, winning 6 races across 2 classes. That form certainly hasn't escaped him, with the 26-year-old just as dominant in the opening round of the National Series at Eastern Creek. After finishing 3rd in the championship last year, he switched from Kawasaki back to Yamaha this season, and what a move it's proving to be. Starting from pole in both superbike races, he led for all but a lap in both. Late in the second, so clear was he in front that he was able to put on a bit of a show in what was an enjoyable afternoon.
After the first couple of laps, I pulled a bit of a gap and I just sat there. I was having fun out there, got sideways a couple of times, through a few corners and stuff.
Stauffer is now just 1 win away from equalling an Australian record for consecutive superbike wins, but must wait until May to get his chance across in Western Australia. Not content with just the Premier class, he then backed up to win both Supersport races as he kicked off his goal to win both Australian titles in impressive fashion. At a whole different pace, Wendale Gateshead and Maitland City both got rolled in Premier League lawn bowls at the weekend, while in hockey, wins for South, the Entrants, the Tigers and Gosford.
Last month, Newcastle's opening round clash was delayed after a pitch invasion with no penalty. Now, if the serial pest wants to give an encore performance, he and other fence jumpers could face fines of up to $5,500.
The Pitch Invasions Act of 2003 has now been extended to cover Energy Australia Stadium.
The second-placed Knights host competition leaders the Cowboys on Sunday, showcasing two of the league's best playmakers.
Thurston and Johns need their forward packs to be playing well, and I think our forward pack has done a great job to start the year.
A job well done too by Clint Newton, who retains his spot in what's become a competitive squad of 17.
For David Siege last week and Riley Brown this week, they can both feel pretty unlucky they're not part of the 17, but that's a situation. It's a good situation to be in for first time in a long while.
The biggest challenge now, according to players, is keeping a level head, especially in the wake of that big win over the Dragons.
You've got to turn up every week, and if your attitude's not right, showed what happened the other week there against the Warriors.
Adam McIlwright, NBN News.
For a band that's only been together for a little while, Benjaloo is achieving big things. Made up of Year 12 students Ben Gumbleton, Luke Elsley, Tony Morris and Kelsley Nathan, the quartet cleaned up at the Youth Rock Band competition. 100 groups entered, but Benjaloo took out first place and the coveted Silverchair Award for Best Original Song.
It's just an amazing feeling, and then once we were up on stage in the final, it's just a great buzz. You got goosebumps because it was so good.
To see people actually get up from their chairs and come down the front and, you know, cheer us and support us, it was just unbelievable.
The competition helped give Silverchair a start in the competitive music industry. Benjaloo hopes for just a fraction of their success. Part of the prize, which is worth in excess of $10,000, is studio time. To a completely different kind of music, and close to 100 students from the Hunter School of Performing Arts today left for the National Band Championships in Brisbane. The school's won several titles in the past. Jessica Phillips, NBN News.
One of 83 Australian airmen posted to the Royal Air Force to ferry bombers between Allied bases during World War II, Qatar's Dick Stanley was the star of today's school's Anzac service. He survived, but many of his mates didn't, and the 86-year-old hopes we never have to face the perils of war again.
We don't want to get caught up in that again. We're too dangerous.
50,000 students have attended the combined schools service in the 52 years since it began. For the past 8 years, it's been run by senior high schoolers. Floral tributes were laid, and 11-year-old Sam Creed belted out a tune on the bagpipes. Meantime, this year's Anzac Day march through Newcastle will be forced to bypass the mall. The march can no longer fit in the mall because of the shade structures installed for the now defunct markets. Instead, it'll turn into Scott Street from Newcommon, then rejoin Hunter Street as it moves towards Civic Park. Paul Lobb, NBN News.
Amazingly, just half an hour after being attacked by a shark, Lake Macquarie teenager Luke Cook was all smiles. At 1:30 he was surfing at Newcastle Break, the Cowrie Hole, when he felt a sharp pain in his left foot.
My legs were just dangling in the water and I think a shark came up and grabbed my foot.
An up-and-coming soccer player, Luke wasn't about to let one of his most important assets get bitten off.
Put my hand down there and I just touched it like around its, I don't know where I touched it. I remember feeling the shark and it let go.
He paddled in, hobbled up to the lifeguard and calmly explained he'd been bitten by a shark. All the while, blood was pouring from the wound.
It had teeth marks and a tear mark where he's fought the shark off and it's ripped his skin.
Water police and lifeguards mounted a search of the area, but no sharks were spotted. It's thought the culprit could have been a young bull shark that mistook Luke's foot for a mullet.
As I said, the fish are running and the water's crystal clear and the large schools of fish attract the sharks.
After being assured by ambulance officers that his injury would not affect his soccer game, Luke vowed to make a return to surfing. Is it going to keep you out of the water, do you think?
No.
Jessica Phyllis, NBN News.
The ships sail into Newcastle Harbour relentlessly, loading coal, grain and a bit of general cargo. But that huge site on the river that once housed BHP is lying idle, despite its massive potential.
Probably nothing like it on the whole east coast of Australia. It's got deep water frontage, it's got good established road and rail network. So what we're looking at now, we're moving from remediation into the next step, which is a master planning phase for development of the site.
Despite the pluses, the state government has been pushing the growth of other ports. $140 million to handle cars at Port Kembla, $500 million to expand container capacity at Port Botany. Newcastle seems a distant third. But the man whose job it is to breathe new life into the site says we won't have to wait forever.
Well, there certainly is potential to establish movement of containers and general cargo sooner rather than later. There's certainly markets for that. We've got a lot of trade going out through the region and northern parts of New South Wales. So it's not a case of simply waiting for 20 or 25 years. There are opportunities that will emerge in the shorter term.
A good level block, water views and close to transport, offers in writing please to the state government.
Stockton residents are up in arms over the redevelopment proposed for the northern part of their suburb. It calls for the demolition of these 4 houses that have been home to several families for up to 60 years to be replaced with 11 units.
Particularly accommodation suited for the aged and people who may need eventually to go to wheelchair or walker use.
A suggestion that has added to the public angst because the homes are a 2-kilometre walk from Stockton's main street and the suburb only has limited medical facilities.
We have no problems with handicapped people or older people. It's just medium density coming into the environment, which is social impact is very big.
The residents are also worried the increase in population could create potential traffic problems for a nearby childcare centre.
I am acutely aware of the distress this has caused to residents and particularly the broader community issues, and I'll be taking those to the Minister for Housing as well as further discussing them with the Department of Housing.
Residents have until April 20th to lodge their comments on the plan with Newcastle Council. Gary Blair, NBN News.
A small but vocal group of University of Newcastle students took part in the National Day of Action. Dozens signed forms making a commitment to join the student union under threat due to the government's VSU legislation. Adding fuel to today's protest, the news that 6 staff employed by the Students' Association known as Noosa are facing the chop. Noosa says it has no choice. With student fees voluntary from July, the organisation has no guaranteed funding.
It's something we've been prepared for, but at the same time it's a pretty upsetting sort of time.
On Monday night, the Noosa Council voted to make all 6 staff redundant, the reality of the VSU finally starting to sink in Newcastle. Among the 6 staff to go, Justine Atkinson, who has worked at Noosa full-time as a committee secretary and research assistant for 15 years.
I'm studying, so I can concentrate on that, but it would be good to have a steady income. Other staff members have mortgages and families to look after, so it's a fairly uncertain time.
Jane Goldsmith, NBN News. It's a fire that's tested the resources of the RFS, burning up to 20 metres under piles of household and building waste dumped at a former coal washery at North Rothbury. 8 crews have spent 2 days trying to extinguish the smouldering mass, the task proving near impossible. Today, reinforcements arrived, 10 heavy vehicles, including excavators, overturning the rubbish, the RFS extinguishing it one small pile at a time. Hazmat testing of the thick smoke revealed it isn't toxic, but that's little comfort for those who live nearby who've lodged dozens of complaints.
It has happened up to 5 times before, so that does pose us another problem inside the fire. Is we get to a level where it was capped off last time, there's a possibility that it's still on fire underneath.
After having its licence suspended last year under environmental protection laws, the tip operator, Newcastle company Leeway Waste, is now in liquidation. That makes neither it or the liquidators liable to fund the clean-up, estimated to be in the hundreds of thousands of dollars, the cost instead falling on the Rural Fire Service.
Our outcome is that that landfill will be moved, it will be extinguished, and to a point or professionally done that we won't have to come back.
Christy Carter, NBN News. Clara Jones is literally pushing the federal government for an overhaul of the regional health system, steering this dilapidated wheelchair from Merriwa to Canberra to see conditions improved for patients.
I've been concerned for quite some time about our health system. I feel it's totally disabled, and as disabled, without a restructure, no amount of money is going to help it.
And it seems many people from across the Hunter region agree. Since leaving Merriwa last week, 500 people have added their names to the petition, throwing their support behind a push for better health resources. At the top of the hit list is the medical complaints system. Clara Jones says the current process isn't keeping the health system safe for patients and is calling on the state government to restructure it.
give the complaints handling, at least the initial complaints handling, back to the local people in the local areas so that they can look at what the complaints are and see if they can work out something that will help stop the things that are happening anymore.
Christy Carter, NBN News.
It began as a pre-dawn house robbery in the inner Newcastle suburb of Hamilton South on August 18 last year, but within minutes escalated to become a more serious crime. 30-year-old David Newman of Thornton near Maitland, armed with a syringe of his own blood, decided he'd also kidnap a 13-year-old girl from the house and steal a family car. The victim was driven around the Newcastle area while attempts were made to obtain the cash from automatic teller machines. When those attempts failed, Newman used a telephone call to the victim's father to make the family aware of the abduction. He said, "I've got your daughter, I want money." The victim was eventually released after 3 hours, but it would be more than 12 hours later that David Newman would hand himself to police. Newcastle District Court was today told Newman committed the offences with the view to obtain money to buy drugs. In handing down the sentence, Judge Ralph Coulahan told Newman he committed very serious offences and added it was impossible to conceive the impact the incident had had on the victim. Newman was sentenced to 6 years jail and will be eligible for release in August 2011. Gary Blair, NBN News.
It was probably a little whaler shark like this that gave 15-year-old surfer Luke Cook the fright of his life yesterday. After 4 hours in the water at a popular break in Newcastle, he was waiting for one last wave when the shark latched onto his foot. He punched the shark and it let go before Luke staggered up the beach and interrupted the lifeguard who was on the phone.
He asked me what he could do for me, and I said, "I think I've been bitten by a shark." He said, "Crikey, you have." And hung up the phone and yeah, very shocked to see that I'd actually been bitten by a shark on the foot.
An X-ray revealed a fragment of tooth had been lodged in Luke's foot and he went under the knife early this morning to have it removed.
Yeah, they did surgery and took the tooth out of my foot because a little tooth was stuck in my foot, left from the shark, and souvenir to show my friends.
DNA will be taken from the tooth to identify the type of shark involved. But Luke is just grateful that the bite was only minor and that he'll be able to surf and play soccer again in a few weeks. Paul Lobb, NBN News. Easter Sunday in Newcastle will be, well, different this year. Korean TV has permission to close off several streets in the East End on Sunday and has notified residents they'll be filming a car chase and firing automatic submachine guns. The company says the noise will be equivalent to a rifle shot or firecracker and could occur between 4 a.m. and 7 p.m. Pets should be kept indoors, and Father Graham will be trying his hardest to ignore the shots as he conducts Easter services just a couple of streets away.
I just find that extraordinary on a holiday family day when people might be out, that we're now going to be subject to that kind of intrusion into our private lives.
Film Hunter says despite the production company paying only a $1,400 fee to use the city, there'll be a financial boost from the 40 crew, and like the recent Superman filming, Newcastle will be showcased to a worldwide audience. But the Dean believes perhaps Easter Sunday wasn't the best timing.
It showcases the city, it brings people here, and we're still a well-kept secret for lots of people. I think that's excellent. I'm just wondering if the whole of this matter has been really well thought through and planned for such an important public holiday time.
Paul Lobb, NBN News.
His side chasing only a handful of guard spots still available in the NBL.
Up here, I think it's a bit restricted with who gets to see her, but down there there is a lot more going on, and there's a lot more money getting thrown around to their teams.
He's not the only player with an open-ended future. Cullen, Everstein and Selwood are also still unsigned. Import Mike Helms has returned to the United States with a view to coming back.
A lot of these guys, such as Jason and Josh and Mitch and Geordie, they may have to wait until fairly late into the selection processes. It may be more into May.
Former coach Adrian Hurley says his players won't go unnoticed, but the mail on his career is more conclusive.
That's retirement, not just from basketball, from everything. So I'm looking forward to that. It's time to spend more time with friends and family.
Adam McIlwright, NBN News.
Just after midday, workers in a harbourside office building raised the alarm after seeing a man struggling to climb back into his boat just east of the floating dock. Water police were scrambled from their nearby base.
The officers quickly located him at the rear of the vessel, and at that particular point it looks like clothing has got caught up in the engine, which has obviously stopped the male person from getting out of the water.
It's not known what caused the man to fall overboard, but clothes wrapped around the still idling propeller dragged him underwater, and it appears he drowned before he could be cut free. The man's runabout was towed to the police wharf at Carrington for officers to make a thorough inspection of the craft. With many people preparing to head out onto the water this Easter, today's accident is a timely reminder.
To be very cautious in and around your boat, especially when you're by yourself, and realistically you're probably better off with two people in a boat if you're going to go out.
The warning from police is clear. If you think you won't be caught doing the wrong thing on the roads this Easter long weekend, think again.
As many police as available will be out in the streets enforcing all road regulations, particularly targeting speeding drivers, driver fatigue, drink driving and non-wearing of occupant restraints.
Today it seemed the message was getting through. Hundreds of motorists taking advantage of a driver reviver stop at the end of the F3 freeway.
We're stopping every couple of hours and giving the legs a stretch and saving the kids from getting too feral.
Take note of the speed traffic and stick to the speed limit and just drive slowly and carefully.
But figures released today by insurance giant AAMI show 41% of Hunter motorists have momentarily fallen asleep behind the wheel while driving. What's even more disturbing is that a quarter of those surveyed still didn't pull over, despite obvious signs of fatigue, the startling statistics prompting police to issue this plea to motorists.
We'd be encouraging all motorists, particularly those travelling lengthy distances, to utilise them and take advantage of it to have it stop, revive, survive.
Double demerits will remain in force until midnight on Monday night. Christy Carter, NBN News.
With nearly a 2-hour wait to buy seafood today, these people are not only patient but determined to have a fresh seafood Easter. But you can't blame the staff for the long wait. The filleters are filleting.
It has not stopped since we opened the doors at 6:30 this morning.
The oyster shuckers are shucking.
Everything we can put in the windows is just walking out.
The wrappers are wrapping, and that little machine spat out about 1,500 tickets today alone.
Another 19 numbers. I've been waiting here for about 150 numbers, so it's on the countdown.
Most people are buying some prawns. Local and Queensland king prawns are selling for $25 a kilo, with the Chinese ones at $15.
Whilst we've got the Vanamais in the window, they prefer to pay $10 a kilo more to buy the Australian product, which is excellent.
A calm sea this week has seen the fishing fleet bringing home the catch daily.
Straight in the window, yeah. We had live prawns in the window this morning, live mud crabs in the window right at this very moment, as you saw. It's just one of those things that God's been good to us this year.
The co-op opens at 6 o'clock tomorrow morning. Paul Lobb, NBN News. Established in the mid-80s, Newcastle's Supernova Science Centre is now giving a second generation of youngsters a hands-on learning opportunity. Second only to Canberra's Questacon, Supernova is housed at the Regional Museum, where for the last 10 years former BHP computer expert Ken McIntyre was a volunteer. He died late last year, but today his family and the museum revealed his legacy.
The bequest is a cash bequest of $548,000, which is an enormous amount of money by our standards, and of course just about by any cash donation in the city.
I was always very proud of anything he'd made, and it made science very accessible to young people.
The money will be put to good use when the museum is redeveloped.
So that when the museum is redeveloped soon, Supernova will open as a brand new, sparkling, exciting a new venture really, which has been funded by this one gift.
Paul Lobb, NBN News.
It's absolutely on the cards, and the sad thing is that $1.50 is on the cards. It's just which cards we're looking at when.
Many junior event down here is being sponsored by Ripkel 6 years. So micro grommet, looking sharp on the inside, looking for fluorescence.
Signing with the Knights 12 months ago, Milton Thaiday was just happy to play Premier League. Now representative honours aren't far from his mind.
That's obviously a dream of mine to represent Queensland, but I'm not even thinking about it at the moment.
It's that here and now attitude which has seen Thaiday secure the fullback spot, and backed by his club coach, that maroon shade of jumper isn't out of reach.
If he can be consistent and playing as well in the next 4 or 5 weeks, he might be in consideration for Queensland.
So too is Matt Bowen, with big things expected of both fullbacks when the Knights and Cowboys meet on Easter Sunday. In the halves, much has been spoken of Johns and Thurston, but it's the up-front battle which has the players talking.
We've sort of made a bit of a pack together this year, knowing that if our forward pack does its job most weeks, we've got the back line to do a job and come away with the end result.
Top two teams at the moment on the table, so both teams I'd say would be looking for it, especially us. We're looking to knock them off the top of the table. And
a full house is likely for the round 6 match, and given its popularity, NRL school pass holders won't be accepted, as seats just can't be guaranteed without a ticket. Adam McIlwright, NBN News. Having won back-to-back NBN Soccer League titles, it's fair to say Broadmeadow is the competition yardstick going into this season. Led by coach Damien Smith, Magic is chasing its 3rd consecutive premiership.
Not so much pressure, but we want to do well, so it's definitely going to be hard. And we've got targets on our head, so everyone will probably want to beat us.
Given Smith's success, it's no wonder the competition's newest coach stayed close at last night's launch, where a promoted Phoenix was officially welcomed into the top grade.
While we've got 6 new players out, we've still got 7 of last year's squad that played second division. Just gelling, really. I mean, the comp's 18 rounds long, so if you drop them first couple of games, it's an uphill battle for the rest of the season.
The newcomers play Adamstown on Sunday. Adam McIlwright, NBN News.
There's a lot to like about Sunday's match-up, especially with the anticipated clash of the number 7s, Newcastle's Andrew Johns and the Cowboys' Jonathan Thurston. But try telling that to the forwards, who are gunning for the showdown.
We don't really think about too much about the backs. The forwards look after our own game, and we go from there. If we can control the middle of the ruck, we'll be right.
No nonsense forward pack and some skillful backs, pretty similar to what we've got this weekend. So we can cancel one another out throughout the game. It'll be an exciting game.
The coaches certainly don't underestimate just how important the forwards will be in this match.
I think there's no secret that that's where our strength has come from this year, is our forward pack. So I think, Thurston and Johns depend on what happens in the middle. And
Andrew Johns will set the new club record for most first-grade games at Newcastle on Sunday, but the visitors hope they've got a game plan to spoil the party.
You certainly got to coach against Andrew Johns, and he's certainly got to be part of your game plan, but we won't be silly about that either, because he is one player of 13 and they've got a number of good players.
Jim Callanan, NBN News.
It was a wet start to the Easter holiday period last night, a combination of heavy rain and traffic causing havoc as holiday makers took to the roads in droves.
The rain and driver inattention, I might add too, did cause a lot of, quite a number of traffic crashes along the F3 freeway and the Pacific Highway.
Today at Karua, the signs said it all. Motorists facing bumper-to-bumper traffic and delays of up to 2 hours on the Pacific Highway, the queue stretching for almost 8 kilometres.
It's normally a 3-hour trip, but it's going to be about 5 today.
Lots of police on the road today. We've seen 4 or 5 of them on the freeway. Several people pulled over.
While hundreds braved the wait, others opted for a pit stop at a driver reviver.
They look for the driver revivers for the stop, and we've had a few that have had their first time stops.
While heavy traffic conditions are expected to ease overnight, police are urging motorists to plan their trip home on Monday.
Hopefully what they did today, except for having the crashes, just drive the conditions, be patient and take your time.
Having faced the traffic chaos themselves, today's drivers have some advice of their own for other motorists.
Just be patient.
Just turn around and go back.
Christy Carter, NBN News. Seafood is synonymous with Good Friday, and it seems almost everyone in the Hunter will be tucking into a fish and prawn dinner tonight, particularly those of Christian faith.
Well, I think the next person through the door will probably be the Pope, because we've had every other Catholic in here this week.
Yesterday, more than 1,300 people passed through the Co-op doors, 1,200 the day before that. Hundreds queued up again today, unprecedented numbers.
I do believe that they've decided probably not to travel away because of the high fuel prices, and that they'd stay at home and they'll have seafood.
And his hunch was spot on. That seemed to be the consensus of those who stayed home.
We just prefer to, have a nice quiet time at Easter and not join the mad rush up the highway.
In terms of the weather, it was a very good Friday. Hundreds soaking up the sunshine, whether it was stepping out for a walk or a swim in the surf.
I'm not religious, so it's just basically a holiday and time to spend with the family, relaxing.
For others, it's a holy day, a time to reflect on the death and resurrection of Jesus.
So to me, Good Friday, it does always remind me of Jesus Christ and what happened a long time ago.
Special services were held across the region, including this one for families at Christchurch Cathedral. Jane Goldsmith, NBN News.
The first Easter happened in a world that's very like our own, a world of terrorism, oppression, violated people and extraordinary poverty. And when the raised Christ appeared, he unleashed a whole new thrust of new life that is still reverberating in the world community today. I'm hoping that at Easter we can take stock and realise the potential that we have as Christians to make a difference in our world for the benefit of the whole community and the whole of humanity.
None of the New Testament writers actually describe the moment of resurrection. What they do is they describe people's reaction to the empty tomb. And the reaction of people then is very much the same as the reaction of people today. Some believe, others disbelieve. But Easter time is an opportunity for all of us to renew our belief in the promise of life after death.
They're called putt-putts for, well, obvious reasons. A small flotilla of the charming old craft putted into Toronto today ahead of this weekend's festival.
Oh, the sound of them. The little Blaxlands have a little rhythm of their own, and you can hear them putting around the lake of a morning when it's quiet. It's a terrific sound, and they just cruise along quietly, no great speed and noise, and they're terrific boats.
David Stott has trailered his clinker-built classic all the way from Melbourne, varnished and polished to within an inch of its life. The little boat, named Penguin, proudly flies the flag of the Upper Murray River.
Well, just being out there, you don't have to go very fast. You just sit back and let the boat go by itself and just enjoy the scenery as it goes past. Just being out there on the water is the best thing.
In the main little pond here with the putt-putts, there'll be 40 or 50 little lake boats, most of them from Lake Macquarie, all of them beautifully done up, all of them waiting for people to have a look at them.
It would have been a long trip from this little boat's home port with just one oar, but apparently skulking gondola-like around the shallows is the thing to do. The Elsie May looks like an old timber classic, but she's a modern steel launch. The Herreshoff Ketch Windsong 4 and the sail training tall ship Watuku are at the larger end of the fleet. The festival runs all weekend on the Toronto foreshore, featuring around 90 boats of all shapes and sizes. Paul Lobb, NBN News.
Well, everyone's looking forward to this Sunday, firstly to celebrate Easter, but secondly the game of the year is at hand between the Cowboys and the Knights. Two rugby league mad cities coming together, their teams on top of their game and on top of the table. Now expect some great duels. The two informed packs for starters, Bowen and Thaiday in the fullback position has 1,000 thrills in that clash alone. But it's Johns and Thurston that's drawing the interest, and for Thurston it has a bigger significance. Now speculation is building as to who'll be the 5'8" in the upcoming Anzac Test. Barrett, Lockyer and Thurston all in contention, but I believe Lockyer will get the nod. However, if Thurston proves himself against Joey on Sunday, selectors will just have to find him a spot in the 17 or even push Lockyer to fullback and Minicello to wing. Now, two great technical defenders in our game, Steve Menzies and also Danny Badiris, pushed technique to the side last weekend to pull off two great hits. Danny's performance was 10 out of 10 and so was this effort. A great hit there from Danny. And also Beaver, Steve Menzies pulled off a couple of good hits against the Warriors, but this was his best. A lot of people don't expect this style of play from him, but he's really impressive as far as being a defender's concerned, and he's in rare form as well. And the sneakiest play of the week goes to Mark Riddell for throwing this little right-hander remarkably from the second row. He collected Luke Prittis, but he also collected a 1-week suspension as well. Bad luck there, Piggy. On to round 6 tonight, I like the Broncos. Saturday, it's the Dragons, Raiders and the Panthers. And Sunday, I like the Tigers, Knights and Bulldogs on Monday. Have a great Easter, have a safe one, and I'll see you next week.
With the full round of games played overnight so players could enjoy the Easter break, there was little to like about the playing conditions. Daniel Frame knew just what to do, standing long enough to slip the perfect pass for Sean Bowe and snare first points. It sparked Wyong into action, with Dean Amos finding an unmarked man in the corner to make it 6-4. 2 tries in a matter of minutes, but for the most part this game was built on defence. And at times, even that went a little over the top. Line breaks were rare, but when Dean Amos finds space, he only knows one way to go, and just before the break, he put on a special to grab the lead. It could have been even more, but his reliable right boot was just off target. He made up for it just after half-time with a penalty to make it 10-6. Before former knight Justin Ryder ensured the margin remained with a try-saver in the corner. But Lakes wouldn't give up and eventually found enough space for Jason McKenzie to level things up once again. Jason Thord had a sideline conversion to take the Seagulls into the lead, and you don't get much closer than this. Paul Skovgaard did get their noses in front with a field goal, but Amos did likewise on the full-time siren as both sides settled for a share of the points.